Myths and legends of Halloween. How did Halloween become Halloween? What are some of the associated legends around it? Listen and find out. Hi, everybody. This is Colleen with Speaking of Spirits, and I am with Celeste and Kate and Susie. And we have some traditions and legends of Halloween in this episode. My favorite. This is my favorite. So my dad was born on Halloween. It was a big deal in our family. And I think it's a big deal for everybody, right? Mm-hmm. You don't have to have a Halloween birthday to love it. And so first, let's talk about where did Halloween spring from? So I'm sure you know this, but it was...
Well, what some of the beliefs are is, for those of you that don't know, the veil thins come October. And yes, what that means is the ability to sense, hear, feel, smell, interact with the other side becomes less... there's less obstacles to it, so it becomes easier. Some people are born with natural gifts where they can feel from the other side at any time, but those who don't have the gifts this time of year, they'll have more activity in their home. They'll have more dreams of visits with friends and family, things going on with that kind of thing. The original belief of why we have costumes on Halloween was because they believed the dead walked the earth. And if they felt so inclined, they would take you with them back to the underworld. And so people would dress up to confuse the spirits so that they wouldn't try to take them to the other side. So that's part of where we get the costumes and different things like that. The All Hallows Eve was the night that it was more prevalent. People would go door to door. They would get, not what we do nowadays, little miniature Snicker bars, but they would get like fruits and vegetables, or they would egg a house or do something. They carried actually hollowed out turnips, which have turned into our jack-o'-lanterns now. So it's kind of a fun thing. If you're part of the pagan belief system, the earth practices, witchcraft, Wiccan, Norse, any of that, Samhain is the Celtic Gaelic word that meant the same thing. It's the Hallow Eve, the sacred Eve, when the other side walks the earth while we do.
Yeah, and so bonfires were a huge part of the belief system. So, and although I don't have a roaring bonfire anymore, I do have my fire pit ready to go. And so all the month of October, I do try to light a fire. Maybe not every night because like today the rain, but I try to, because that bonfire is a practice of Samhain. It's a practice of those old Celtic beliefs of protecting yourself and coming together, and it's a lot of fun if you haven't, but
it's also the New Year in the Celtic tradition.
Yes, it is.
And it's a time when we had done the other podcast on the Day of the Dead, but it's the time when a lot of people believe those who have crossed in the last year will go back with the ancestors to Summerland, to heaven, to the other side. And so sometimes those bonfires were lit to help light their way. They were also lit to sacrifice the leftovers of the crops to give back to the earth
Right.
so that they didn't starve during the winters and they would have a good crop the next year.
Well, the ashes are very important for farming because it adds nutrients back to the soil. So, I mean, so all fall, right? I have a huge garden and I'm canning and I'm preparing and I'm putting things up, but it's that part of that new year where you're giving thanks back to, the planet for providing to you because it's provided me with food all summer, and so I can and I put things up, and then in the wintertime I give a lot of that stuff away as part of
Right.
celebration of the earth.
And people
So,
didn't have grocery stores back in the day. If you didn't plan and prepare your food and store it properly, you might not live through the winter. And it was also a
Yeah.
really big tradition of sharing.
Sharing.
The community kind of thing.
Yeah.
If I had a bad vegetable crop, then maybe I could give some of my grain
Right.
to another person or my honey, and they could
Right.
give me some of the produce, kind
And,
of a thing to save.
in the farming community, a lot of us do that now. So if my neighbors, I have a tribal elder that lives next to me, and we got 7 salmon. So he gave me a salmon just this week. So I cooked it, and he came over. We had our neighbors over, so it's like we share, everybody shares. So out here, if you get an elk, then you might get a couple of elk steaks from your neighbor, and then I give them eggs and I give them tomatoes, and we're always sharing, and it's a really important thing to do. So, but it's also believed that the bonfire could predict your future spouse, right? So you cut a little. I'm reaching for hair like I have some. I'm looking at Kate with her hair. I'm like, well, you cut some hair if you had some, and you sprinkle it on the fire, and that night you would dream about your future spouse. So it was Halloween. That's when you did that, and then your future spouse would be revealed. I am not doing that because I never want to be married again. Just saying. But anyway, I thought that was really cute. That's something that was a belief. But the jack-o'-lantern is another huge part of our Halloween traditions, right? And so it's a Celtic tradition, like you said. It started with turnips, right? It became the pumpkin. I'm not sure exactly why, other than maybe pumpkins were bigger, and so,
Turnips are
Turnips are-
scary. So like me and my daughter actually do the turnips in honor of that instead of pumpkins. And oh my gosh, they are creepy. Like no,
Yeah, they're like got the wrinkly looking.
Yeah. So, and pumpkins. What's cool with me? So I grew some pumpkins this year, which is really cool. It's the first time they've ever come in, and they're about this big. I can't wait to cut them, but. I don't know, maybe the goats will eat the turnips, but I don't think the horses will. But the pumpkins, after I'm done with them, they go to the horses. So, yeah, I'm always trying to, I don't want any waste here. So that's what I don't,
Really, pumpkins as a transition into American culture because pumpkins are American, an American crop. So
yeah, so, yeah, it says that so the Celtic tradition was the turnip. And in order to carry home an ember to keep your fire going from the bonfire, they would carry home an ember. They would tuck it in a turnip, and it would keep the ember hot enough that when you got home, you could light your hearth again if it went out. So I thought that was kind of fascinating. So, but there's a story that jack-o'-lanterns date back to the 18th century. And it was named after an Irish blacksmith called Jack, who colluded with the devil and was denied entry into heaven. Jack was condemned to walk the earth for eternity and asked the devil for some light. He was given a burning coal that was burnt into a turnip, and that he hollowed out. And so there's an Irish belief that hanging a lantern in front of their window would keep Jack's wandering soul away from entering their home. So that you light, instead of, the turnip, now it's the pumpkin, you light the jack-o'-lantern to keep Jack from coming into the home. Keeps him out. Like that one. That's very cool. When the Scottish immigrated into America, they adapted that tradition and used the American pumpkin instead of the Irish turnip. So, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But when did costumes come about? That's, Yeah, so that was part of the bonfire tradition again, was that everybody dressed up in costume. And they had, if you look at old photos, they were spooky as hell.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Well, even when I was a kid, those plastic masks.
oh God.
They showed this picture, and it's like, what horror movie is this? Oh, it's Mrs. So and So's third grade class.
Yeah.
You know,
And
it
I'm
was
like, I wore that.
yeah, I'm like, it's Raggedy Ann instead of.
Uh-huh.
Those things.
Oh, I know, they were terrible. But they addressed, obviously, they didn't have these kind of costumes today that we have today, but they dressed in animal skins and animal heads. I mean, it was scary stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm like, dancing around a bonfire with like a dead deer head on is not my idea of a good time. But anyway, apparently it was for them. But there was an idea that evil spirits would be taken by the fire too. So if you danced around in these costumes, they couldn't find you, and their spirit would be taken. So there's that tradition as well. I don't know. Well, I'm Irish, so anything Celtic, I love it. Okay, but what about trick or treat?
There's like so many different theories on trick or treating. Like, I think the one I hear most often is it was created by the candy companies in America to push out products, which I mean, they definitely did once they realized that they could create a lot of small size treats to hand out on Halloween.
But before the candy, there were they would hand out apples and other
Yeah.
Nuts
sweet
and-
fruits and
It was
things like
going
that.
door to door to ask your neighbors for
Yeah,
Yeah.
winter supplies.
winter supplies. So yeah, so they didn't do trick or treat, but it just became bastardized,
kids.
at later because it was the act of going door to door to your neighbors and y'all would trade, and then it became gimme or I'm gonna egg your house.
But
Yeah.
on that same note, if that person is selfish and isn't willing to supply some of their need, their what they have extra of, then it serves them right to get soaked or egged or riced or or toilet
Yeah.
papered, because that shows to the entire community that person right there is not willing to be part of the community and share with the rest of us.
Yeah. Well, I've been in Idaho 14 years and I have never had one trick or treater, so.
The trunk or treats though have like really killed that.
Yeah.
It's
There to be safe because we live in such a
but it's like if you are in a good neighborhood and you know your neighbors and let your kids trick or treat, that's part of it. But yeah, no, I get it.
Would still take my children to all the relatives and friends and family that we knew and go trick or treat them all the time.
Yeah, that's what.
Because as soon as that trunk or treat thing came in, my kids cried.
Yeah, I don't like it.
Yep.
I don't like it. So those are some of the traditions, but
I mean, with trick or treating, you can also talk about a modern day legend or myth that like people are purposely handing out drugs, trying to like hurt children.
that's
There's
scary.
been like maybe like 5 actual stories, or like it's a really small
Well,
amount.
that's
but
it.
it's, like blown
Raise-
up.
I don't
Is it
remember
a
who
candy
said,
bar?
but they're like, if you've ever bought drugs, they're really expensive and no one's going to give them to your children for free. And it's just like, but what a sick, twisted world we
Well,
live
except
in.
now with fentanyl, who knows?
Yeah, poison.
Yeah, I don't know. The other thing that I don't, so like legends and all that, Halloween should always be on Halloween.
Yes.
Now they're trying to make it always the
Saturday.
Yeah.
No, it's Halloween for a reason. It should be Halloween. I'm a purist. It's Halloween.
Yes.
And All Hallows Eve is prank night. It's the way it should be, as long as they're not pranking to hurt and not pranking to destroy property. It's prank night.
It's usually those kids that want to go hang out with their friends and everybody feels they're too old to trick or treat, so they go out and do pranks, and that tradition's kind of gone to the wayside as well, which kind of makes me sad. I
I'm
used to be the
sorry.
pranker.
There is not an age
No.
limit on chocolate.
It-
No,
well,
If
here's the
someone
deal.
knocks on my door, grown-ups too, when they come
Yep.
with their little kids, I give them, or ask if they want.
If somebody
to.
dresses up, they deserve a treat. I think there is no age limit. My dad was 89 when he passed away, and he still wore his Groucho Marx mustache no, it's a thing. You have to dress up. It's the one day it's allowed, and it's not frowned upon. So do it. Enjoy it. So Ghosts of the Dead returning, Samhain, right? we dress up in costumes and we have the bonfires and we're trying to. But I'm like, why? I want my dead relatives to come to me. I want to hear them and see them. A lot of people don't. It scares the hell out of them.
Well, I think too, a lot of people believe it's the evil spirits let you chase away doing those activities, not your ancestors or.
Well, unless they're evil, I guess.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
But yeah. So, what other legends do you associate with Halloween? Or are there any particular legends that you totally believe in? Besides, like the jack-o'-lantern and keeping Jack from your house. Are there any other legends that you're?
The one that I was going to say, I am a medium, and so people talk about the veil thinning. Oh, it absolutely thins. This is the time of year I get more people calling me. There's weird sounds in my house, or I set my keys down, and when I came back, they weren't there, and I found them hanging on a hook, and I know I didn't do that. And it really does happen. The thing, like you, I think, wasn't it you that was just saying about being scary or not scary or whatever, is it isn't always bad, but people that are not familiar with souls, spirits, ghosts, energy, when you can't see it or explain it, it can be scary.
It can be scary.
And there are things out there that are scary and evil and naughty. They're not the majority of things. And this is one of the things with the ghost hunting that we've talked to people about, is if Bob was the farmer who developed all of this land, who built the homestead, who did all of that, and he didn't want to cross because he loved that, and you're suddenly remodeling his house, yeah, activity may kick up, but that doesn't mean that Bob is bad.
Right.
However, there are things that are bad, and then there's really terrible people that have died and they're afraid to cross because they don't want the punishment. Realizing or not realizing, they're punishing their own self by staying in the in-between kind of a thing. So, it can be cool to have that opportunity to communicate.
We talk
easier.
about, so this is Dead Uncle Fred, and we talk about Dead Uncle Fred a lot, and that's why he's our mascot on our artwork. So is it a demon or is it Dead Uncle Fred, right? Not all dead things are demonic. Most dead entities that come to us are Dead Uncle Fred. It's our relatives. It's people that we were close to, or sometimes people we've never known, but they see you as a means to help them communicate, or they have a message. But so the Celts had the Druids, of which I had found out through research that my family were practicing Druids, and they were not always kind. They were educators, and they were the scholars in the Celtic world, but they were also the punisher. Justice.
Yep.
Yeah, they would dole out justice, and it wasn't always kind.
Well,
But they did animal sacrifices on Samhain, on Halloween. That was the night that they did their bonfires, and they would sacrifice an animal. But that was to help the farming community have a good harvest the next year. You sacrificed an animal, and they burned the crops and they got ready for the next year. Still today, people don't know this. It's morbid, but it's a practice that you do in farming. The blood from a slaughterhouse is put into the field. And I know this because I used to inspect slaughterhouses, and it's rendering plants. Duh. And all that blood has to go somewhere. They don't put it in a drain. It goes back into the crops because it puts iron and nutrients back into the soil so that you can grow more crops. Gross, but there you have it.
Well,
it's bringing that cycle back around again.
people didn't mass slaughter animals like we do now.
Right.
So they did naturally let it drain into the ground.
You did.
And it's not just a part of the Celtic belief. It's
Right.
part of Judaism. It's part of the Muslim. It's
That's
part of
true.
the Christian. They sacrificed the lamb. They sacrificed the goat. They sacrificed the cow.
But it wasn't just slaughtering to slaughter. It was slaughtering to feed.
Yeah. But they gifted the Norse tradition. They gifted that blood back.
Right.
To help with rebirth, whether that was animals, people, crops, prosperity, any of that.
Yeah.
And also to expand on what she said about the energy in the veil being thinner. For example, in my family, there is always a tradition. We always have the pumpkins outside to keep watch of the house. And with my family, because I'm a medium and my kids have inherited the gifts as well, that we know that the veil is thinner. There's more activity that picks up, even just around us, and they are well aware and they know. Don't answer a door, especially if they knock 3 times. Do not open that door. Always look out. Don't ever open the door not knowing who they are. Because when we talked about that earlier, posting and stuff, that is something that has been ingrained in my family forever, is you'd always look. Because
Yes.
you could be inviting something that you don't
Don't
know
want
what it
in.
is. And that happens with our home, which I warned my family again because the energy changed once again. It was a little bit earlier this year. I felt it like maybe a week earlier than normal. And for example, we've got a little bit of activity in our house right now. Something has turned on one of our blenders without anyone around at 2:30 in the morning, and my kids have said, hey mom, blender's turned on again. I'm like, all right, we'll take care of it, and my son-in-law even went out and messed with the blender, and he was standing there and took the lid off the blender and it kicked on without him touching it. So so my family's aware of it. They know what happens, that somebody just wants your attention. Could be dead Uncle Fred, but it's just closer.
Fred.
It's just closer.
Come on, dude.
Right?
It's
just
Quit
closer.
making smoothies at 2:30
I
in
know.
the morning,
I
man.
know, it
How's the
should
matter?
share.
vacuum.
Right?
Vacuum.
Yeah.
I'm going to do
Clean
something like
something
that.
Well, here's a very interesting thing that I just recently saw. How many of you have a welcome mat outside your home or a sign that says welcome?
I don't have
Get
welcome.
rid of
Get
it.
rid of it.
Because you're welcoming anything outside
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
to come.
probably it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No one's welcome here except for a few. There's such a few. I'm armed and I know how to use
We
it.
should
There are some great
They
ones
also
on Amazon.
suggested, depending on what kind of mat it is, flip it upside down so that you just have the back side up.
Yeah.
But yeah, don't have the signs hanging on the doors, the wreaths, or anything, because you're giving permission for whatever
Well,
for your home.
I have wreaths, but they don't say welcome.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So what about the scarecrow? The scarecrow's always been associated with fall and Halloween. I think the scarecrow came around for scaring birds away from crops.
Yep.
They don't work, just so you know. They don't work at all.
They just scare little kids.
They scare little kids, and there's been a hell of a lot of movies made with scary scarecrows in them. But I do think that this is me being me. I don't like dolls. I don't like anything like that. Yeah. So Fred's an exception. He's allowed in the house, and I have several Freds. But dolls, no. I have a teddy bear. That was my great grandfather's. He's allowed. And I have a teddy bear somebody gave to me. That one's allowed. That's it. I don't do dolls. Dolls are not allowed. Scarecrows, I don't like them either. They're cute on my wreath. I have a little happy one, but I think it could turn evil like that. Just saying. I don't like them. So, Decon on my other podcast, he bought a haunted doll. And before we record almost every time now, he's always showing me the doll. I'm like, get it out of here. I can't handle it, man.
I would be out so fast.
It's-
I have a huge doll collection.
Oh,
In a big glass case, I've got the clowns that move.
Oh,
when you-
clown.
so my friend in Texas, Gary, she'd laugh at this if she's watching this. She has dolls, like all these like ceramic. I walk into this room, her office, and she's got all these and they're beautiful because she's made handmade dresses for my. I'm like, that is like my nightmare. Is her office
There's
space.
so many people that, they truly
Can't
are.
do.
When we moved
The
to
little
Pocatello,
pitter patter of feet at night. No.
yeah, when we moved to Pocatello, I have big glass cases that from the time I was like 4 or 5 years old, I have Bradley dolls and porcelain dolls and Cabbage Patch dolls and homemade Native American dolls, all kinds of things. My son was 4 and he said, well, he was almost 5. He said, Mom, will you please not put, I had it in my living room. So my dolls have been for 26 years in my glass case, in my basement, in my storage room with stuff in front of them because it freaked my kids out.
Yeah.
They would go in there with their recorders when they were little kids and tell all their friends how haunted that room was.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not them.
My
But,
mother made those same things with the porcelain dolls and the dresses, and gave them to my children. Well, when she passed, my children gathered them all up. They kept them, but now they're in a sealed tote in a
Yeah,
storage
with
unit.
super glue
Like,
and
that's
stuff.
where they stay.
Yeah.
They're not in my room because when they were younger, they didn't like them in their rooms. So every night, as tradition, I'd have to go in there and take the dolls and put them inside of a drawer so they wouldn't watch them at night and close it.
No, I can't. No
Yeah.
dolls.
Yeah,
So
collect my-
it got a little off topic from Halloween, but yeah, I'm sure that most of y'all can relate. Yeah. Even my dad's, so you can't see it, but right off camera is my dad's flight suit. One of his flight suits. I have like 5 of them in here from when he was in World War II and Korean War, and then he flew until he was like 84. And even the flight suits hanging there bother me. It's so hard it's just I know they're not going anywhere, and that flight suit's been there, and I can't. There's something to the human shape. I can't do. But Fred's allowed. He's cool.
Bobia, there's a
Anna,
Anna banana.
It's a few dolls in human shape.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's my daughter. We had to box all of hers up. So I probably have $200 of it.
Dad took my daughter to the thrift store and bought several dolls, and they came glued. I was like, one, you don't know what's attached to them. You bought them at a thrift store, and then I have the fear of dolls too, and I swear they would just
So
sit there and
Anna-
stare.
Atomic. So it's Anna Tom something you said.
Yes, it is.
Because that's the human, right?
Anatomy.
The anatomy, right? Yeah, I'm with you. No dolls. I walk into a thrift store. I'm like, oh,
See, they
no.
put that up on the shelf, but what was it? Doll in the Hall? Now that would be my favorite. But now
No. I hell no. No. Oh no. Anyway, God. So okay,
We'll figure it out later.
we've talked about the Celtic, the turnips to the pumpkins, which I love that. And then you light the jack-o'-lantern. You may not have known it, but you're lighting the jack-o'-lantern to keep Jack away from the house. So I don't think it necessarily has to be a pumpkin jack-o'-lantern. I mean, like, it can be electric. It's the light. It's the lighting to keep Jack away from the house, right? We talked about the druids and what they did, the bonfires, predicting your spouse. All of these things are connected with this one day, and I think it's pretty cool that Halloween has not gone away.
No.
It's never going to go away because we like to dress up. We like to pretend that we're something that we're not. We
Or
like.
we really are pretending to be what
What
we
we're-
are, that we hide.
Yes, that we have to hide all exactly. That we can be the one night where we're the vampire, and actually, I'm allergic to all of that face makeup now, and I wish I wasn't. But when I was in the service, I did my face so well, and I was totally dressed up as a vampire, and I was an air traffic controller. So, if it wasn't for the fact that they knew who I was on my shift talking to those airplanes, they didn't know who I was. I was walking through air operations and nobody knew who I was because the makeup was so good, and I had real vamp teeth that I could glued on. It was so cool. But anyway, I have fun with it, guys. It's the greatest thing that we have in America, I think, is the Celtic holiday.
Yeah.
So
Well, and there's a lot of people, religious people, that believe it's about evil and the devil and all of that kind of stuff. What your intentions are, what your beliefs are, is what you're creating. And so it's everybody's decision what they do. But if you don't want it to be about that, don't be about that. If you want your children to only pick fun things like unicorns and clowns to dress up as, some people don't think clowns are very fun. But it's not evil. It's not negative. What we put into our beliefs, our superstitions, is what creates those feelings,
Right.
not what the actuality is.
right, yeah.
Whenever 2 or more women get together, great things happen.
Woohoo! Cheers.
You've been listening to Speaking of Spirits, powered by Pocatello Paranormal Research in Pocatello, Idaho. Thank you for joining us today. We're glad you could be here. If you're enjoying the podcast, please do us a favor and go to whatever platform you are listening to the podcast on and give us a review. We prefer the 5-star reviews. This helps us know how we're doing, and it helps others to find the podcast. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you on our next podcast.